Jody, I wanted to ask about Alex Chilton. In some interviews, he comes across as not necessarily very enthusiastic about Big Star. Why do you think that was?
The opening, there's an opening sequence in the movie, and Alex talks about a band that changed a lot of people's heads. So, he must have had a good impression of Big Star at that point. And I just think Alex was trying to carve out another path for himself and go in a different direction. Because, when we got back together in '93 for that reunion and John Hour and Ken Stringfellow joined in, I just can't imagine Alex doing something that he didn't want to do. It's not something, as Alex said about the documentary and declining an interview, he said, it's not something I'm inclined to do. So, you take that, and Alex must have enjoyed playing those Big Star gigs and being a part of that. I'd see him smile on stage, and he would have a good time, and some of the interaction with fans, it looked like he was really enjoying himself. For me, it's a cinch. I love the music, and I love that interaction with Alex on stage and John Hour and Ken Stringfellow. We had some pretty wonderful moments on stage. So, I don't know. Alex was Alex.
I've always wondered about this, and I don't know that you would necessarily have an answer for it, but Alex's vocal style changed pretty significantly from how he sang lead on some of those box top songs compared to how he sang in Big Star. Is that something that was a conscious decision or something that you talked about as you were recording number one record?
Well, from what I've heard, Alex was coached by Dan Penn to sing that way with the box tops. And so having heard that, it makes me think that wasn't actually Alex's natural way of singing when he sang with them. So it maybe he just reverted back to a more natural way for him to sing. But, I don't know that for sure because I never talked to Alex about it. And, I don't know that there was any real discussion about it.
It seems on some of the quieter songs he sang for Big Star and even some of the poppier songs, there's real emotion in his voice, which is a big contrast from what was maybe trying to sound older or more soulful on those box top records.
Yeah, I liked Alex's voice with the box tops, but I somehow was a bit more intimate or a little window open to inside of Alex when you would hear him sing with Big Star. He just had one of those voices that was emotionally engaging, with whatever he sang, because I think he just sort of remained true to whatever his spirit was in that song, and so, that's what you heard come through vocally.
Always on my mind. I didn't know about love.
There's some people can just do that. Chris, when Chris sang, you believed what he was saying and you experienced what he was singing about, or you would experience the tone in his voice, or I don't know what it is, but both of them, were just kind of immediately engaging vocally to me.
And were they pretty close collaborators in the early days? I know in the early days of the Beatles, Lennon and McCartney supposedly wrote eyeball to eyeball.
Well, Alex talks about working with Chris a little bit in the documentary, and I would think they did. I was there for band rehearsal, and there would be that interaction at the rehearsals in terms of parts and guitar parts and all that sort of thing. And there was definitely a thought process about how the guitars interacted and, how the bass played in and drums. And, there was a lot of thought to arrangements. But, I think there was some close collaboration in terms of writing with Chris and Alex, and even Andy, was probably part of that, but I wasn't, because I wasn't a writer at the time.
And I know sometimes the drummer, when you're recording, you'll finish your parts for the songs. Did you stick around after to hear the layers that would be added to that? Were you around to listen to the vocals that Chris and Alex had put on?
A lot of it was, and some of it I wasn't, because Chris might go in the studio, late at night and work on parts or something, and then bring Alex in and maybe engineer those off-hour sessions along with Andy, and I wouldn't be a part of it.
So you must have been, I would say, for the parts that you weren't there for, I'm sure you must have been very pleasantly surprised once you heard the final product.
I was always pleasantly surprised. I mean, with whatever came out of those guys, to me, it went from being in a cover band to being in a band that was playing original music, and I went from, okay, we're playing a Beatles song, you learn what Ringo did, to playing a Big Star song, and there's not a template there, there's not anything to go by, so you have to create that part. And, I'd hear the guitar parts come out of Alex or Chris, the bass parts come out of Andy, and it was fascinating these melodies just seemingly come out of nowhere, or this feel for a particular guitar performance. There's nothing more enjoyable than the creative process of things.
Come inside and light my room like the heart of every man.
Jody, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and I appreciate the time that you've taken with me today here, but being from Minnesota, I have to ask about Golden Smog.
Yay, I'm glad you asked.
And I wanted to ask about some of our Midwest music heroes that you played with in Golden Smog. I would think they would hold you in some reverence, but I was wondering if you could talk about how you became involved with them.
Well, I got a call from Maggie McPherson, the band's manager, in maybe November of '96, and she asked me if I'd like to join Golden Smog, and told me who was in the folks in the band, and it didn't take more than 2 seconds to say yes, I would love to, because I just, I loved those bands, Soul Asylum and Jayhawks and Wilco and Uncle Tupelo before that, and so I was pretty excited. I didn't know how they felt about me, but I was pretty excited, and I'm not sure who actually came up with why don't we call Jody Stevens. It might have been Mark Perlman, but I learned once upon a time, but could have been Mark Perlman. But at any rate, so
whoever's idea it was, it seems like it was a perfect fit.
It was brilliant. They flew me up to Chicago because they were playing a gig at there, and I was just going to sit in on a couple of songs, and did, and had a great time. And of course, that was New Year's Eve or the day before, and then I think a couple of weeks later, I flew up to Minneapolis, and we practiced we worked up the songs that we were going to do for Weird Tales, and then everybody came to Memphis, and we recorded here at C Studio, did all the tracks and stuff, and it was an incredible time. Everybody worked so well together. There were no egos. It was kind of song focused, and everybody was bringing in songs. Greg and Danny and Gary and Jeff, and they were actually encouraging me to write a song. But I didn't that first round, and then a year went by, and then everybody came back to Arden, and we did some more recording. They kept saying, write a song, and I finally wrote some lyrics for Fear of Falling, and then Gary and Jeff finished it. I got to have part of a song on the Golden Smog record, but it was nothing but a good time, and such a great match for me, because I was, I loved those songs. They would bring up a song and just be another great song that I felt some relationship to. And it's always, easier to play drums to something or play any instrument to something that you feel like you have some response to.
If I make 3 wishes, one is not to fall.
Well, thank you for talking to me about Golden Smog. I still think Weird Tales is a great album, and it's another great addition to your legacy as a musician.
Well, thanks. I was so grateful, and I still practice Golden Smog songs. Just, you never know. When you get that call from Golden Smog, it's always fun.
How do you practice usually? Are you with a live band, or do you have headphones? What do you still have left to learn about playing?
Well, you've got to keep your chops up. I haven't played in like 2.5 weeks now, and it'll probably show big time when I sit down to practice. But I play along to Golden Smog, a live performance, and the Weird Tales record, and Big Star records and Big Star live performances. Is how I practice.
And Jody,
I just sit out and hit play, and actually, I can get a lot more practicing done. In an hour and a half's worth of practicing, I can do what anybody does in a 3 or 4 hour band rehearsal.
Jody, if we can just kind of wrap things up here full circle with Big Star. Watching the film at the end, John Fry is at the board listening to some Big Star, and he was as close to the creation of some of that music as the band. And having been that close and going through all the highs and lows of Big Star, as he's listening to the music, a big smile comes across his face. And that's kind of how the film ends. And I think that sums up the legacy of the band quite well. How would you sum up the legacy?
That's the way I would sum it up. I would say watch John Fry's, the expression on his face as he pushes away from the console at the end of that movie. It's just a brilliant way to end it. Kind of sums up my feelings about John and the band. And there's no better way to put it than that.